Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who is a life coach, a podcast host, and a soloist at her local church. She has a virtual weekend workshop upcoming from September 17th to the 19th. She is host of her own podcast called the Lillian McDermott Radio Show. Everybody, welcome Lillian McDermott to the show.
Oh, I love the applause.
Yes,
I wasn't expecting that.
well,
We,
not most of my guests don't, and I feel that everybody deserves an applause, and I like bringing something different to the table for everybody.
well, that certainly does. Thank you so much for the introduction. I have to clarify something. I was a soloist for many, many, many years. I no longer go to a church, and that
Okay.
is probably one of the things I miss the most. So I sing at other places when there's an opportunity, and when I love music, and contemporary Christian music is in my heart, and how God fed me scripture for many years before I even opened the Bible.
Oh,
So singing is very dear, but unfortunately, I am no longer affiliated with any church.
okay. Well, hey, everybody, does new things. I'm sorry that I got that wrong
No, oh,
in
no,
the
no, no,
intro.
no. I just wanted to clarify it.
Okay.
I need to update that on my website, honestly. But you're absolutely right. It did. I've given my time, my talent, my treasure to the church. And over the last, I would say, 5 years, my church has been the community that I've created through the radio show, through my family, my friends, and of course I attend other people's churches, but I'm not I'm not a member of them. And so it wasn't you were absolutely right to think that, because it's in my website, but I need to update that. But I have been in a soloist, but I don't want to make it about that. But yes, we're really excited about the workshop coming up this Friday, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. There's still a seat for people who are interested in attending. And I believe that to me is my ministry now, is to bringing people not only to themselves and look at themselves for the way God looks at them, but help them make that step closer to returning to Christ as well.
Oh, that's beautiful, and I feel like that is kind of how the I don't I'll use the term the church as a broad statement, but I feel like my podcast is kind of like that type of deal, that I'm bringing people back to Christ and helping them heal themselves and look at themselves in a new way that
Yeah.
maybe the church should have been doing, or maybe that's what it was in the beginning was designed for, and we've gotten so far away from the truth that it's become a thing to control people and to shame people and guilt people. And this is what our society has become, is that
Yeah.
people do bad things, and then they want to keep those things hidden, so then people can then blackmail or use that against them in some sense. And you know and I'm not even talking about on a conspiratorial type of deal, but just on a regular day-to-day interaction. Someone's like, oh, well, I don't want to do this with that person because then they're going to hold that over my head. And I feel we're so far away from the truth that I look around and it's nothing but lies, and it's a very difficult world to walk through right now.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to
Okay.
1981.
Okay.
Okay. William Casey, the CIA director, and you can look this up. Nothing I say, I want you to believe. I want you to research it and make it your own truth. So these are things that I've learned along the way through the radio show, then now with the classroom. So it's the Lillian McDermott Radio Show classroom, which is right here. And that is where I learned these truths. And I will tell you this, that William Casey in 1981, the CIA director, said, and it's quoted all over the internet, "We will know when our disinformation program is a success, when everything the American public believes," and I would like to add, the world, "is a lie." Think about that. Everything the American public believes as truth is a lie. But here's the other side of that coin. What if everything we thought was a lie is truth?
Mhm.
When I looked at that everything that I believed is a potential lie, that completely liberated me to be curious about the things I hear instead of critical.
Mm.
It's very easy to dismiss it by calling it a conspiracy, or easy to dismiss it as something that, oh, that's not truth. That's not what I was taught. And it makes people angry. And I say the more angry you get when you hear something, stop, explore, and figure out, why am I so angry? Is it that I'm angry at the message, or I'm angry at the messenger? Am I angry with the fact that somebody believes that something is true and I believe it's a lie? Why am I angry? And I believe that if people were to stop themselves and say, why am I angry at what they're saying? Because I believe that our intuition, that God-given intuition that we've had our entire lives, becomes in conflict with what we believe is true, with our ego. And that's the anger right there. That's the anger within us, is that we are thinking that we are angry with a person. No, we're angry that we could possibly be lied to. And I'd rather not think that and just call you a liar,
Right.
you a conspiracy theorist, you misinformed, because that's so much easier for me. I don't have to process that. I can just dismiss you.
Right.
And that's where we've gotten to at this point.
Yeah, and it really is. People get angry, or they laugh at it, or they just dismiss it completely. Like, oh, that's absurd, because I've seen that in a movie. That can't be real. Yeah, I've seen that in sci-fi. I've seen that on TV show. That's what Netflix.
Yeah.
And that's how they do it. Is they present the truth in a format that makes it
Fantasy.
unbelievable. Yeah.
It's fantasy. Yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like I've been researching Tartaria lately. I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's this civilization, and it's all over the maps from the 1950s, and it was a huge part of Asia. Was this country called Tartaria, and now it seems so utterly ridiculous when they talk about the things that are found in there. That maybe they had flying vehicles that and there's all this sci-fi type of stuff that maybe 200 years ago that we actually had these types of things going on, and maybe Napoleon, that's how they crossed the Alps, was using these different zeppelins. And when you are presented with something at face value of, oh, maybe cars weren't invented until 1900s because they used flying vehicles before that, people are just, oh, that's the most ridiculous thing. But then you look into it a little bit, and it's like, well, it's actually a real possibility. And they've hidden all of the truth throughout time in
Yeah.
movies and fantasy, sci-fi, that type of thing. And like William Casey said, everything is a lie right now. No one
Correct.
knows what to believe.
Correct.
It's craziness.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You would say something about Tartarius, and I would write it down because I need to research it now. Most people would go, oh, that's ridiculous, and dismiss
Right.
it, or call you a name and feel better about themselves.
Mhm.
So these are things that I used to do. That's why I know, and so I joke about it and I say, I get it. I'm not here selling anything. If you want a way, a key to get to know yourself and get to know the God in you, I'm all for it. I'm
Mhm.
all there. If you just want to criticize me or cut me down, or, the world has done that. There's nothing you can say to me that is going to make me less than, or make me feel like, oh man, I better change my way. I better go get that vaccine because someone's going to talk bad about me. I better change my life, because people care more about what people think than
Mhm.
what God thinks of you.
Exactly. I say that all the time. God can't give you a degree in psychology, or a degree in any of these different fields. But, when you're following God, you just got to trust it. And it's the most difficult thing is to blindly trust something. But when it's presented to you over and over that you should just continue to trust it, it's
Yeah.
like, well, there's no other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and that's how my journey started. I went on s- I don't know if you remember, I don't know how old you are, but you were probably very young when this happened. But there was a housing crisis back in 2006 through
Mhm.
2009. People were losing their jobs. These are people were losing their livelihoods
Right.
out of lies from liar loans, and we were wrapped in that lie. Because we had a large business that catered to builders in Florida, and we got caught into that because as soon as we would deliver our products, one by one, they started filing bankruptcy. And that put us in a situation in our life that it pushed me out of the home and into the work field. And
Mhm.
that led to one thing, and that led to another thing. And then a company hired me and stole all my contacts. And as a result of this, um, I started a new company for myself. And within a short period of time, I had a marketing campaign for my clients. And someone said, you should go on the radio and promote that. And I said, well, if you want me to go on the radio, book it, find it, and I'll go. I'd never been on the radio before and had no clue what I would do or say. But I went on, he found someone and had me on. I was interviewed by the station owner. And after a 30-minute interview, he said to me, wow, how long have you been doing radio? And I looked at my watch and I went, 30 minutes. Had that chain of events not happened, that pushed me into the workforce, had that company, after I was in the workforce, I got really good at what I did and someone else recruited me out of there. And had it not been for that company that hired me and intended to steal my clients, my contacts, and it wasn't until that moment that I texted one of those doctors that I would have never had the opportunity to meet had it not been for this company. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be a life coach today. I wouldn't have the wisdom that God has given me, the teachers that have come into the classroom. I would not have that today. I don't know who I would be today had these series of events. But what happens is people get angry at these series of events, whether they're good, they're bad, they're ugly, they're indifferent. We start throwing tantrums. And what I've learned through this journey is that it's so important that we just look at it with curiosity. What am I learning here? What am I supposed to learn? Yeah, get upset, but don't let that anger stay in you. Because what I've learned from the teachers in the classroom and the research that I've done is that anger or that bitterness or that resentment stays in your body, and your
Mhm.
body turns against you because it doesn't know you're angry with somebody else, that you're hurt with somebody else, that you need to forgive somebody else, that you are grateful. It doesn't know that it's happening now or it happened 10 years ago. It doesn't know that. The body doesn't know that. It doesn't discern. The brain doesn't discern time. It just knows what it knows. And so as we're going through this journey, had I said, oh my gosh, I can't handle having to leave my home or going back to work. I cannot handle any of this. Our dream to retire in 10 years. I could be wallowing in that, but I wouldn't be here today talking to you, would I?
Right. That's a beautiful story of synchronicity of how God shows us, and when we reflect on things, we realize like, oh, this was set up back then, and then that was set up back then, and then you go back
Perfect.
into your till you're a child, and you're like, oh, it's been set up this way my entire life. Like I'm very
Yes.
special. God
Yes.
has done this for me, even
Mhm.
though it is very difficult at times, and we go through unpleasant things. It is for a reason and it
Mhm.
is for our greater good. Now, maybe it's not necessarily a prerequisite for everybody, and maybe that it's this way because people have been doing bad things in this reality for a very long time
Yeah.
and have led us so far astray that we have to, at some point, get past the nonsense that has been avoided. And I
Yeah.
feel that a lot of people are doing this with what's coined as shadow work,
Mhm.
and that we're all healing our wounds. So You've been a life coach now for how long?
Since 2012. So I
Okay.
started my own business as a result of a group. I mean, they offered me some great money to be a marketing person for them, and with a 90-day clause that they could let me go without cause.
Oh, wow.
And so when I looked at the contract, I said, I don't like that clause. I don't like that clause. And he says, well, have you ever been let go of any company? I went, no, I've never been let go. And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. So they loved everything I was doing. And they were just like, oh, you need to send us your contacts. You need to send us, who are you speaking with? What's their phone number? And I gladly did it because they were paying me to do what I was doing for them. And so after on the 89th day, they called me and said, we love what you're doing. You've done such a great job, but we decided to eliminate the position.
Oh,
Now, at that moment, I felt a relief that I hadn't felt in a long time.
mm,
But it was at that moment that I said yes to God. It
wow.
was at that moment that I texted the doctor that I would have never had the opportunity to have met. At that moment, when I said yes to the radio show, and then that guy, after several times, I had not seen him. I had lived in the town that I lived in for 5 years, and I had never heard of the station. I had never heard of him. And then I'm running into him at every turn. At every
Wow.
turn, I'm running into him. And he was the one that asked me, if you could do a radio show, what would it be on? And I'd say, not everybody has a good friend to turn to. So I would want to do a show. And at the time, like I said, I'm not the same person I used to be. So it was like, I want to talk about the latest in pharmaceuticals. I was wanting to be a pharmaceutical rep, but now I know that in the Bible, it says that pharmakia is compared to
Mhm.
witchcraft. And so I'm glad that never happened. And but God had a plan. I did become a marketer, but I didn't become a marketer for a pharmaceutical company, which I would have been, I hear and obey. So in 2010, I started my company. In 2011, I promoted my company on the radio. And on my birthday, Todd, May 14th, in 2011, I started, that was my first show. That was my first show. It was on the day of my birthday.
That's amazing.
Yes. And when he asked me, what would you do if I thought he was going to charge me for it? And it was just going to be I didn't realize he had me pitching him.
Oh,
And then after I finished what I wanted to say, I wanted a place where people can talk and share their opinion without having to be right. It's like you have to be wrong in order for me to be right. All these arguments. And let me listen to you, listen to me, and have a roundtable discussion. And he said at the end, do it. And I said, what do you mean do it? He goes, I want you to do that. I want you to start doing this on a Saturday at noon. And then the following year, it was a Saturday for 2 hours. And then the following year, it was Monday through Friday. And then the
wow.
following year, it was Monday through Saturday, because I was picked up at another station in Jacksonville who had 200 stations. And so it just like, it was a yes. I could have said, John, I don't know anything about radio. I've not gone to school for that. I still don't know anything about the radio. But the reality is, God gives us exactly what we need, when we need it, at the moment we need it. And if you know God's promises and you count on God's promises, you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. You see, we believe we're Christians and we believe in God, but we don't rely on its promises.
Hmm.
So it's really important that we learn about God. And that's become my church, because Dr. Day, I don't know if you've seen any shows that we've done or any classes with Dr. Day. Do you know who she is, Dr. Lorraine Day?
No, I do not.
Okay, so she is a regular since 2012, 2013, because after I started in 2011 and I started inviting guest on the show, because back then it was a radio show. It was a radio show until 2019. Since my birthday, 2019, I started doing the classroom. It was no radio, all internet. And I had invited her back in 2012 to come on because I started, okay, so do you want to hear? This is what happened.
Okay.
So in 2012, this guy that owned a vegan restaurant, a raw vegan restaurant, came to the station. And I saw this food, and they brought it to a bunch of people that eat meat and fried foods and donuts, and that's what they were eating for breakfast. I've always had good nutrition because I've had food allergies. So it was basically, because I had to take care of myself, there were certain things I could eat, certain things I couldn't eat. But when I took a bite, I'm like, why do you guys have this food? Well, I called the guy and I said, listen, you're wasting your time with these people. Come to my show and I will give you time. I will promote you, but I work for food. So he came and he brought me all this food and I was like in heaven. And so I invited him and he said to me, I invited him on the show. And I started asking questions about raw vegan and eating this kind of way. And he challenged me, 30 days, go raw vegan for 30 days. And like I say, yes, oh, sure, I'll do that. I can do anything for 30 days, especially if it's not going to harm my body and it's not illegal or immoral. I can do anything. I have to put a disclaimer there. And so after 4 days of eating raw vegan, I felt really good. But here's the thing, I wasn't feeling bad. I didn't know I could feel better. Now I'm no longer raw vegan, but I eat a whole food plant-based. I would call myself a nutritarian. I focus on nutrients, nutrient-rich foods. But I thought at that time, if food can make me feel this good, what else have I been lied to about?
That's a beautiful line of thinking.
That is what began my journey into the New Truths, the New Truths series, the New Truths. That's what I'm writing a book. Those are things that I started becoming curious. And so I was researching water. And this woman named Lorraine Day, Dr. Lorraine Day, talked about how water is very important for healing cancer. So I researched her and I did a background search on her. She was in hospice, stage 4 cancer. She didn't do radiation. She didn't do chemotherapy. She didn't have a mastectomy. And here she was still alive. Let me reach out to her. Wow. So I reached out to her. She came on my show back in 2012, poked me in the eye several times, kicked me in the stomach. And I was like, what? And I said, after we were done, I'm never going to have her back on the show. This is just too much. She was the one that told me about William Casey. And I started researching her because I wanted her to be wrong. I wanted to prove her wrong. And boy, was I wrong. So she was in bed, ready to die, hospice. They knew that she was going to make it through the night.
Wow.
That was 28 years ago, Todd.
Wow. And that was from
amazing.
water?
No. She has started reading the Bible. She thought God was a pyromaniac and just a psychopath. And she said a prayer. She said, she was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and she didn't like the God, if you were asking about religion and all that. And, she always says Satan invented religion, because that's when we all separated. That's when you couldn't go directly to God. You had to go to the priests or the Sadducees or the Pharisees. You couldn't have that close relationship. Nowhere in the Bible does it talk about the church. It talks about ecclesia, which is a assembly. It's an assembly. And so she started researching, and she said, God, if you're there, show me your way. What do I need to do? Because she knew as a doctor, she was one of the first 10 women trauma surgeons that were out there, and she was chief of her department, and she was like at the prime of her life, and she had cancer. And she
Wow.
says we give ourselves diseases. And so
Hmm.
she learned in the Bible what God wants us to do, plus did some research that was not out there. And so we've done lots of shows on this. So you can go at whenyouneedafriend.com and click on my YouTube channel or my BitChute channel or whichever one, and look up Dr. Lorraine Day. We did the 10 commandments of health. This is the ways to, people want to be healthy, but they don't want to do what they have to do. And then
Right.
they're shocked that they're sick or that
Right.
we are sick. I'm not saying they, as in not me included, me included. We all have to do whatever we have to do to live the life that we want. And little by little, that's how the workshop began.
Hmm.
It started as an article. Was asked to write for the Florida Today, which is a sister paper for USA Today. So it's Florida USA Today. Again, I'm not a writer. I was told my freshman year of college that I could not write. But here I was writing articles for 4 years. And I wrote an article called I Am the Solution. And it's a story that I tell during the workshop that happened to me. And I wrote an article on it. Then I was contacted by a doctor and said, you're a motivational speaker. Do you ever do offices? And I said, sure. So I gave a 1-hour talk on that. And then someone else said, hey, would you like to be a speaker at our workshop? Then that turned into a 3-hour talk. And then at the end of that, that's when God planted in my heart that this needed to become a workshop.
Yeah, well, I can see why people wanted you right away. You are a brilliant speaker. You are very open-minded to everything, and it's funny how you said you wanted to prove her wrong. That's usually how many of us get our awakening into these research topics. Is that you hear it a lot with flat Earth. I don't know if you're into that at all, but they're all like, "Oh, I got into it because I wanted to disprove it because it sounds so ridiculous." And then they can't disprove it. I'm not really a flat earther or anything like that, but
No.
it's it's usually how it goes is that we hear something so ridiculous, we're like, that can't be true.
Yeah.
That can't possibly be true. And then oh my God, it is. And then what else is a lie? Like you said, and it's amazing how it goes
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Lorraine Day and I are close friends now. She kept coming back year after year and I have a joke with her. I always say when she's in the classroom, I go, okay, who's ready to get poked in the eye? Because she's going to say something that's going to really irritate us. Woo, woo. And we laugh about it now. But let me tell you, I grew up in a family of right fighters. We had to be right. And in order for me to be right, you had to be wrong.
Exactly.
And I've gone so far from that. And although I don't find myself, I'm more open. Or, if you think you're evolved, go around your family. They know how to pull your triggers. They know how to. So it's like when you start seeing those behaviors and you start seeing that, oh my gosh, if I go against what my family believes, what my friends believe, what the government believes, what, my spouse believes, what, a stranger believes. And all of a sudden you say, nope, that's not my truth anymore. That supported me when I was a child, but it doesn't support me today. What supports me today? What are these truths? So that is what I do. And by the way, I don't want to dismiss. Thank you so much for your compliment. That's very sweet of you. But I wasn't always like this. And when
Right.
people make fun of me, I laugh and I go, oh, I'm reaping what I sowed.
Uh,
I'm reaping what I sowed. I did this to people. If you would have told me, this has been 10 years, Todd, that I've been learning new truths, just like you are. You had your journey, and your journey is a gift.
mhm.
It is a gift that brought you to your truth, to your new truths. And we all, if we look at this as a gift and a lesson, and if you go to my website, I have a page that very little people want to even enter, and it's called 100% responsibility page. It's the 100% responsibility page. And that right there changed my life. changed my life. That if, like, just like Dr. Day, she realized she got herself sick. Sickness, illness is not hereditary. Only 1% is. And I'll say 5%. But people are shocked when they get diabetes. People are shocked when they get heart disease. Oh, and then they say, oh, my mom had heart disease, or my dad had cancer, or this wasn't me. This has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with my genes. I'm a victim.
Mm.
You see how we do it?
Yeah.
You can see twin brothers, identical twin brothers with alcoholic parents, and you ask them why one drinks and the other one doesn't drink ever, and they both give you the same response. How could I have not? Look at my parents.
Mm-hmm.
One chose to learn what not to do, and the other chose to learn what to do.
Right.
We're all teachers and we're all students. And until you say, you know what? It's not about them anymore. It's about my choices and what I put into my body. If I put sand in my gas tank, do you think anybody would say, why is your car not running?
Right.
They would say, get the sand out of there. You need to give it the right fuel. You need to read your owner's manual, the Bible. You need to put the right fuel, nutrition, stress, sleep. The way we, the first day on the workshop is all about, where do we get those thoughts? How do we rewrite the program? And, what are these keys to lead me to the life that I want? That's day one. Day two is about, what's my belief about God? Because Todd, if you and I never had this conversation again, if you and I never spoke, how close would you feel to me? Versus you and I talk on the phone every day.
Right.
And you tell me about your problems and I tell
That's
you about
so
my problems.
brilliant.
So if we did not continue to communicate with one another, we would just be a memory.
Right.
A memory. Oh, that was a great time, Todd, such a great guy. That's it. You won't know me. But if I exposed myself and said, you know what, Todd? I've had really, really difficult moments. You might think she could not have a care in the world. And so it is that relationship that we negate from God, that we take away. We say, God, oh, I love God. I'm going to go learn about God once a week for 20 minutes. And it's through the church, through a Bible that has been altered, that the words like ecclesia, instead of saying the group, the assembly, they put church. Instead of saying Hades and fire or Gehenna, they say hell. And all of a sudden, you better fear, because this wonderful God that loves everybody is going to burn you in hell if you don't do exactly what God wants you to do.
Right.
That's the God of the church.
Yep.
And I'm not saying don't go to church. I'm saying read the right Bible. Learn about these new truths so that in the times of need, in the time that we're just like, how could this have happened to me? You change and you say, this didn't happen to me. This happened for me. So that I can learn what it feels like to be overweight or a drug addict or an alcoholic, what it feels like to be abused, what it feels like to be abandoned or disregarded or made fun of because they're a conspiracy theorist.
Right. Yeah, we take those experience and we use it to help others who are going through that experience, to show them that there is a way out.
That's
And
right.
that was so brilliant what you said. I've never looked at it that way, that if you're only talking to God when something goes wrong and you're blaming, like, of course, you, in your memory, you're burning into your muscle memory of, oh, every time I think of God, something bad has just occurred to me.
Yeah.
So of
Yeah.
course I think God's a bad person.
Yeah.
And if God was real, why is all this bad stuff happen? And we don't look at it as in the alternate perspective of this is happening for me, not happening to me. This is happening for me. And
Yeah.
why is this happening for me? So that I can learn, so that I can help others, so that, it's a cycle. And
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way. Thank you for that. That's brilliant.
Well, thank you. Well, when I was 10 years old, Todd, I was at church, and I don't remember much of anything in my childhood. I don't remember much of that moment at church, but I remember what the priest said at that moment. It pierced my heart at the age of 10. And he said, some people are upset because their shoes don't match, or maybe they don't have any new shoes to wear, which I'm a shoe girl. So he got me right there. But if you look at your neighbor, they may not have any feet. And at the age of 10, maybe 8 or 9, 10 years old, that age frame, I knew that was a gift, that whatever is happening to me, it could have been worse.
Right.
So gratitude was something that was instilled in me at that moment. So no matter what I was going through life, and yeah, it could be really stinky, really awful, really gut wrenching, like losing a child, or losing a business, having to walk away from your fortune, the money taken away from you, somebody stabbing you in the back, or somebody taking or stealing from you, or something going into your house and robbing your jewelry that was given to you when you were a child. Those little things, they happen for me. When you start looking at, man, it could have been worse. I could have been beaten or homeless, or I could have been in the house when the house was robbed. You start thinking about that, and all of a sudden, and I don't know if you know who Wayne Dyer is. Do you know who Dr. Dyer?
It sounds familiar, but I can't say for sure.
Well, Wayne Dyer was someone I used to follow when I was younger. I used to read a lot of self-help books, but I would read them for other people. I wasn't reading them for me. And because everybody else was wrong. It's like I needed to fix them. But Wayne Dyer was the first one that I really, really could resonate with. And he used to quote people and never remember where he learned it from. So I heard, it's probably 30 years ago, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. But that wasn't his quote. That's a quote from a philosopher from a long time ago named Max Planck, because I was writing an article about that, and I thought, he used to quote other people. I want to research to see who it was who said it. It was Max Planck. All you had to do was Google it, and they called me from the newspaper and said, yeah, we think it was Wayne Dyer. And I said, no, Wayne Dyer quoted everybody and never gave him credit for it. So if you can say Wayne Dyer said it, but it was a quote from Max Planck, I'm okay with that, because I want to give people credit, because I have never in my life, my experience was I would say things and people would take it and make it their own without giving me the benefit of it.
Right.
And so I learned that. And so I give as many people credit in the classroom, because it's the right thing to do, because I know how it feels to not to do things and share things and come up with ideas, and they take it as if it were their own.
Well, and it's also that all glory to God is that, are you holding it on to yourself for selfish reasons? Are you trying to impress other people by saying, "Oh, this is my thing"? But no, it's actually, even though it's another human, that is a part of God, and it's all glory to God. I want to give over the proper respect, and
Absolutely.
that's what really got me into Jesus. I was like, all right, I found out all this different information, and I'm not a Christian at all. I don't like Christianity, probably more so than what you were saying. But it's because of what the church has done to people. Not that the certain people that identify as Christians, I'm okay with them, but I just don't identify with that as myself. But anyway, what I was saying with Jesus was uh, that I wanted to give credit where credit was due. And so I had this big awakening with Jesus, and I saw that he was there the entire time.
Mhm.
And he's like, you know, I don't really care what anyone does or anything because I love them all equally. uh, But it is nice to be acknowledged. And I was like, you know what? I'm not just going to keep this in any longer. And I started going on other podcasts that were more centralized around conspiracy theories and maybe spirituality as a generality, and I'm talking about Jesus, and it turned a lot of people off. And then I started realizing, like, oh, you know, this is a tough road, actually, that Jesus isn't as accepted as we may think he is. That even though 70% of Americans identify as Christian, probably only 10% of them actually identify with Jesus in the all loving, non judgmental person that God wants us to be.
Mhm.
And you know, there is a lot of fine tuning in there. You know, it's not just a blanket
Mhm.
statement, but following Jesus, having the personal relationship with Jesus, I think is exactly as you were saying earlier. You know, you pick up that phone, who you going to call? You know, and it's a lot of people say, oh, the Most High God, you know, the God above gods. They give all these different titles to God, the mind that creates all of us. But when you want to have the personal relationship, you want to pick up that phone and I'm having a tough time. I need some help. I need some guidance. What would Jesus do? That's
Mhm.
what I really turn to. Uh,
Yeah, and that's beautiful, Todd. And what a great testimony you can give now, as you say, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't identify with Christianity,
I
but
was an
now,
atheist for a long time.
well, but it's because, and I don't know, as a coach, I would say, are you open?
Yeah.
A lot of people that are atheists and a lot of people that turn away from God. I'm not saying this is you, but
Oh, it
I'm saying
was. I
a
know what
lot
you were
of
going to say. It was.
they have a really difficult relationship as a child with their father or
Right.
father figure or man, or maybe even if they were abandoned by both, or maybe even if the father died and it was nothing to do with the father. That right there can
Mhm.
skew, because we talk about this on day one. What causes our beliefs? What causes our subconscious mind? What is it? So we dive into, what is it about who I am today and why? And as I was saying, the second day we talk about God and that relationship with God, and how do we respond to God? How do we, when things don't work out the way they should work out, or I think it should work out, why is it that it's God's fault? I had Harry Vox in the show, and he is a wonderful guy, but the God thing, he's not about the God thing. And he says, if God is so good and so loving, why is the world so horrible? And I went, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's take you back to the Garden of Eden when everything was good. The waters would rise and mist the lawn. There was no sweating, there was no waste, there was nobody eating anything other than berries and fruits, and everybody was happy. They were naked, they didn't even know they didn't have clothing. But what happened? They wanted to learn more than God. They wanted to know more than God. You see, because God had a tree of life, and it had a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It wasn't just the knowledge of evil, it was the knowledge of good and evil.
Mhm.
And then, as the story goes, the woman was tempted. And then the woman tempted the man. But nobody took responsibility. It was the serpent that did it. It was the woman who did it. It wasn't never Adam.
Mhm.
Nobody ever wanted to take responsibility. But that's why that started. God makes good and evil. And we forget, because we don't have that connection. We think, okay, it's me, 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 me. So how do we want that connection? And that's Saturday, all day, that we work on together from noon to 6 or 7. Friday, we meet from 6 to 9 or 10. And then Saturday from noon to 6 or 7. And then on Sunday, we take all this and we put it all together. We learn about how I am the solution, but the I am is the I am of God. See, God is in me. God is in you, Todd.
Mhm.
And that is the I am. And Jesus didn't say to the paralytic man that was waiting for 38 years by the pool to let the, I don't know if you know the story of the paralytic man who was sitting by the pool, waiting for 38 years. When Jesus saw him, Jesus knew that he had been waiting. But Jesus could have healed him. He could have said, baboom, Shazam, whatever. He could have done whatever. He could have healed the guy. But Jesus went to the guy and said, why are you here? And he tells the story how nobody picked him up and nobody put him in the pool. Nobody did this. And Jesus says, well, do you want to be healed? Jesus could have just boom, you could be healed. And the guy said, yes. And then Jesus said, pick up your mat and walk. And so he did. Jesus could have levitated him and thrown him in the pool. But we are partners with God. So if we are partners with God and something goes wrong, somewhere I'm in there. And if I'm curious instead of critical, ready to blame in my ego, then I can see truly that God worked things out for the good of all, not just me, not just you, the good of all.
Wow.
And that is Romans 8. I love Romans 8, by the way. Romans 8 talks about the groaning of the spirit. And let me tell you, my spirit's been groaning. This whole pandemic, it's been groaning. And even if I can't pray for what I want, my spirit is groaning to God and God understands it. And I'm saying, God, you're 100 trillion times smarter than me. Help me accept, help me discern. And I trust in you, Lord, because I know that you work things out for the good of all. We've got to learn the promises of God. And we learned that through the workshop. We learned that through classes that I do with Dr. Lorraine Day. By the way, I have a DVD called Nutri Series Book of Revelation with Dr. Lorraine Day. It's 12 weeks of the end of time. And we have it on DVD, we have it online, and now, and they could be purchased at whenyouneedafriend.com. And now we're getting ready to release the 100 plus lessons from the Exodus. It started off as 50, but Dr. Lorraine Day, she under promises and over delivers. So we're at 100 plus lessons from the Exodus. And think about it. The Israelites were slaves in Egypt. And some of the Israelites did not leave with Moses. But there were hundreds of thousands who went on this journey. It was supposed to be a three-hour tour. It was supposed to be a 3-week journey. And it turned into 40 years. And so we walked through the Bible with the Israelites, 12 weeks. It's online right now, but in about a month or so, it'll be on DVD. But we need to learn these lessons that were there for us. It didn't happen to them. And you learn the story of Joseph. Do you know the story of the son of Jacob? Jacob had 12 sons, and one of his favorite was Joseph.
No, I don't know this story.
Well, his brothers, because he was the favorite, and he used to boast about it, and he boasted about his dreams, and they hated him. His brothers hated him. And so they abandoned him. They put him in a well. And then they were just going to kill him. And they were going to take his coat that his father gave him and put blood on it and said, oh, he was killed by a lion. But one of the brothers says, don't do that to him. Sell him to slavery. And he was sold to slavery. And because he was so smart and talented, he was a slave and in prison. And of course, he was handsome. So all the women would come on to him. And then he would get in trouble when the men found out about it. He'd get back into prison and so on and so forth. Well, anyway, he had dreams and he interpreted dreams. And Pharaoh learned about it. And so Jacob was taken out of prison and he became the right hand of Pharaoh. During this time, famine had taken over the land of Egypt, of the land where they were. And so they went over to where the Pharaoh was and begged for the grace, because of the, let me go back, because of the dreams that he's had, they started storing grain and wheat and all these things because he predicted there would be famine. So now all his brothers are hungry, and they make way to go to this man, Joseph, who was the right hand of Pharaoh, to beg for food. Joseph recognized them as his brothers. He threw them in jail. But the story of Joseph is so beautiful that he wept because he hated the anger that he had for his brothers, but he wanted to teach him a lesson. By the way, his brothers told Jacob that he had passed away, that he was killed. So his father mourned his death when he was still alive. So Joseph had a change of heart, and he presented himself to his brothers, although they were in prison, and he ended up bringing his father. He asked for their father to bring him back, but he never revealed who he was because he had grown up, he had changed. And he forgave them. He forgave all of them.
Wow.
And he said to his brothers, what you intended as harm, God intended for good. And that's the story of Egypt before they enslaved all the Israelites. But by the time Moses came along and led the people to the promised land, there were many pharaohs that had come and gone, and now there was evil again.
Right.
So we learn the stories of the Israelites without any food, without any shelter, with a cloud during the day to protect them from the sun, with a fire at night to help them with the cold. Manna came from heaven and fed them for 40 years because they needed to learn their lessons before entering the promised land. And so that's one of the things that I want for people to know, that God is a loving God, but we have put God into our image as opposed to God making us in God's image.
Right.
So
if we want to enter God's kingdom, there's certain rules that we have to abide by in the kingdom. And if we don't know the lessons, that if we're not learning the lessons here and we're still doing those bad behaviors, that's not allowed in God's kingdom. So we have to work it out here. And what you were saying, the acceptance of our own responsibilities and everything that goes on, it is man's will that has created evil in the way that it exists today. And
it could be, but what about the serpent? What about Satan in the Garden of Eden, tempting Eve?
well, yeah, that kind of leads me to like the test with Job. The book of Job is, and that everybody is facing that in some sense. And I don't mean just like it was Eve's fault for all of humanity. I just mean that we all have kept some mistakes have been made, and instead of reverting back and accepting responsibility and getting rid of that, we have just kind of kept going, and we've kept doing these things that aren't so nice and aren't so good. So when people say, why, if God exists, if a loving God exists, why is there evil? Well, it's because we all have the free will, and God gives us all the free will to choose to do what we want to do. And God wants us to choose to love God, to follow God, and He's going to allow us to do whatever it is that we want to do until we get to the point that, oh, I don't want that anymore. I want God. And now I seek God in every conversation I have, every interaction, everything I see. Yeah, everything in my life is about God. And I was an atheist for a long time.
Good for you. And I'm sure that helped you heal from your past as well. We think that, and here, one of the new truths that I've learned is that there may not be free will, because eventually you will end up where you need to be. How did that happen? Because
Right.
all these negative turns, even these choices that we call mistakes, they truly are growth opportunities, Todd. And those
Right.
growth opportunities come from, and you said it correctly, you nailed it when you said, God wants us to choose God.
Hmm.
Not because Adam and Eve didn't know how good they had it, because they didn't know bad
Right.
until they chose to eat from the tree of the knowledge from good and evil. It wasn't just the knowledge of evil. There was good and evil, but that's how Satan entices us. It feels good.
Right. Well, see, I think with free will, I think that there is exactly what you're saying, that it is designed there for us to hit certain things at certain times, but within those predestined things, I think there is some kind of free will, and there's also,
Sure.
we're kind of switching timelines. So in every decision we make, it sets us on a new path, and that path is all the paths are created, all the highways already exist. We just have to travel down which ones we want. So in that sense, so it is, a tightrope of free will versus destiny that we all do walk this, fine line of.
Yeah, I think that that the destiny is that God will own all of us. He will own our souls because we will bow down. All of us will bow down.
Yeah.
No one will be left behind. We heard the story of the 99 sheep that were like with the shepherd, but there was one sheep that couldn't be found. And the shepherd, how long did the shepherd look for that one sheep? Kept looking for that one sheep until he found it.
Mm.
He didn't just leave the one sheep and say, go screw yourself, go to hell. No, didn't. He searched for the sheep. All the sheep were saved, not just the 99, but all of them. The woman that looked for her penny, that little tiny widow's mite, look, how long did she search for that penny? Until she found it. And that's where we're at. You see, in John, I believe it's John 10, it says, you cannot be snatched out of the hands of God. But guess what? You can certainly walk away because
Mhm.
you are protected in the hands of God. But if you say, no, I don't need that right now, I think I'm just go chase the squirrel for a little bit. You can do that. But that's not necessarily free will. That's a choice. We can make choices because eventually we will all be restored.
Mhm.
And it's called universal restoration, not universalism, where everybody who's evil and everybody, but we have to reap what we sow. That's why I don't mind it when people call me names, and I don't mind it when people make fun of me or people say, oh, she's one of those. I don't mind because I did it myself. I'm reaping what I'm sowing, because I want to be purified. And
Right.
that's how God purifies us, through
Trial
fire.
by fire. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, by fire. If I think about the times, Todd, that you have learned your lessons, your greatest lessons, were you sitting and having a drink and having a good time with your buddies and laughing and reminiscing, or were you on your knees or in a terrible place in your life where you felt unworthy, or you felt that nothing you could do or say is good enough
Right.
and you need to be restored?
Right. I was an addict for 10 years, addicted to everything,
Yeah.
porn, sex, drugs, alcohol, or maybe not so much with alcohol, just because I had the drugs, cigarettes, overeating, eating terrible foods, drinking bad things. I was addicted to everything. And now I am so free that I can stop anything at any point. And I only got that way because God has freed me, because I've been giving over my shame and my guilt and all those horrible things that I did, all those awful things that I thought, and that made me think that I was not deserving of God's love. I had to come to peace with that in myself and say, God said it's okay, even though I know it's okay, not okay to want to act on those things or do those things. I now choose not to do those things. I don't
Mhm.
want to, And now that I've created discernment for myself because I have tried it this way and I've tried it this way, and this way was no good, I'm at peace with it, even though it may have hurt somebody at the time and may have hurt myself at the time. And I'm not okay that I hurt people, but I am okay with me being me. And,
Mhm.
that's how I've been freed
And how long did God search for you?
my entire life until he
Mm.
found me.
Till he found you. We don't have free will. We think we have free will. And like Dr. Day says, how much free will does a child have that, is throwing a tantrum on the ground, and the mom says, go to bed, and they go, no, 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 I don't want to go to bed, I don't wanna go to bed. And then all of a sudden they walk out of the room and the child goes, oh, I better go to bed. Did that child choose to go to bed because they had free will, or because that's what they chose? That was the option for them. Now, if they throw a tantrum and they decide to disobey, there's consequences to that. You see, we call things that are harmful to us punishments. I call them consequences.
Okay.
There are consequences for the good things we do, and there are consequences for the bad things we do.
Mm-hmm.
They're not punishment from God. We need to get God out of that equation because we chose it.
Right. Cause and effect.
Cause and effect, correct. And so when many people, they're like, oh yeah, God is great, God is great, God is great. And hey, listen, I know firsthand what it feels like to lose everything. But did I lose everything? No, I didn't. I could view it that way. But what did I gain? Look at the things that I've gained. And that is what, you see, if we're focusing on what we don't have, we will create more of what we don't want.
Right, right, right.
If we focus on what God has done or what we are thinking about, then we start acting like picking up our mat. Oh, if I need to get that job, oh, I better pick up the mat and go make a phone call or get dressed and go get that job. No, no, I'd rather just let God take care of me. I'm just going to sit down and eat some yo-hos, whatever it is. It's not real. It's not real. We've got to create, we're co-creators with God. And every decision we make, every decision is for the good of all. Can you imagine a God that can, when I take a turn, just like Dorothy did in the Yellow Brick Road, she would take all these, by the way, I wrote an article called Follow Your Yellow Brick Road. Every time she turned, she would fall out of the yellow brick road. She would bring some people in with her. Sometimes she'd lose some people. And every step of the way, by the time she got to Oz, she realized that she had all the power in her. The Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, they all had it. And at the end of that yellow brick road was a fraud. And we need to look at our yellow brick road. Is it leading to God or is it leading to fraud? And one day I was frustrated and I said to Dr. Day, I said, we're compared to the stupidest animal in the world. We're the sheep. What good is that? And she said, well, the sheep recognize the voice of the shepherd and only does what the shepherd wants. But we have forgotten who the shepherd is. We're following the wrong shepherd because remember, good and evil. Mm-hmm. Good and evil. It feels good, but it's not good. We've got to get to that place where you're at, Todd, and say, I know I'd like to choose that, but it's evil. Mm-hmm. It's going to hurt me. It's going to destroy every shred of who I am.
Right.
So I choose God. I choose the good shepherd, not the imposter that steals the sheep, that comes through the back gate and tries to be the shepherd. But if you are the sheep and you're truly following the shepherd, you will recognize when evil is there. So well done, Mr. Todd. You are a sheep following the good shepherd.
Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And I kind of have visions sometimes, and I see that the sheep is like this big cloud of consciousness, whereas the goat is this thing that is there's no consciousness to it. It's a very and not that there's no conscious, but the fluffiness of it.
Mhm.
Sheep is nice and fluffy, whereas a goat is very thin and muscular. Whereas the sheep is just this big old thing, and you need sheep shears to keep it contained and that's kind of how I like to look at it.
Well, I really, until just last year, I resented being called sheeple. I
Yeah, me
resented
too.
calling a sheep. I resented it. I am more than a sheep. Um, well, if it means that I am following God's plan and God's way, and believe me, I'm not perfect. Every day, we've got to make that connection. Hey,
Hmm.
Todd, how you doing? How you feeling today? Oh, Lily, I was just tempted. I had a friend that I hadn't seen in a long time and they had these drugs and I didn't want to be embarrassed, but I told them, oh, I have to go. I have another event to go to. I lied, but I really needed to go out there. That's a good one. Good job, Todd. You listened to the shepherd. You
Yeah,
listened to the good shepherd. You did what's uncomfortable and difficult to do
right,
because there are people comfortable comfort can kill you
right.
because
That's a
there's
good idea.
people that are comfortable getting beaten every night and there's people that are comfortable doing drugs until they pass out every day.
Hmm.
That can kill you. And that's when you're in your ego. When you're in your ego, you are listening to the voice of the imposter. How do you know you're in your ego? You're looking good, in control, want to be right, and comfortable. That's how you know you're in your ego. But the moment you go, ah, you know what? I'm going to step outside that comfort zone. That's my ego. And I'm going to learn something different and new. How else can I find joy without smoking pot or getting drug or getting high or any of that? How else can I be happy? Can I be curious about that long enough to develop a habit? Can I trust God to provide for me? Can I trust God's teaching and understanding to rewrite the program in my head that I'm not enough, that I'm not good, that I'm ugly, that I'm too fat, that I'm too thin, that every man is horrible, that every woman is a betrayer, all these thoughts that happen when we were children. That's what we learn in the workshop. And if I think about it, my whole life has been preparing me for this. But guess what? I've got a long way to go. Because the moment you think you've arrived, you've got a new destination.
Yeah, that's always going. You're like you always not always, but sometimes you feel like oh, I'm getting to the end, and then you get there, and it's like, oh, now I have this whole new challenge ahead of me, and it's
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
perfect.
But is it a challenge or is it a way to get closer to God? Is
Right,
it, you see, that's what we need to refrain. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And if we look, okay, this is one part of my hand, but if I only looked at this side, then I would be
right,
missing this side. And
right.
there is always another side. When people come to you, oh, my mom used to say this to me all the time. And the first time I said this, I was like, Mommy, where are you, Mommy? It's like, when people come to you with gossip, they will take gossip to other people.
Right.
But here's the thing, when people come to you with gossip, they're telling you who they are
Yep.
because you see in others who you are.
Hmm.
So listen carefully when people come to you and they're telling you about that boss of theirs. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but they're seeing what you see comes from the heart. If
Right.
you're looking for goodness, you see goodness in everywhere. If
Right.
you're looking for what can I convict you of today, you're going to find fault. And one of the things that I've always created in not just in the radio show, the classroom, and now the workshop or anything that I do is how can I discover what we have in common? Can you imagine if you and I created win-win all the time?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I-
You
If we
win.
all did that,
That's right.
right? Yeah,
But the world says win, lose. The world says win, lose. But that's
right,
not real. That's not real,
right.
Todd. Because do you know who won the Super Bowl last year? Do you know who played last year in the Super Bowl?
Actually, I don't.
Okay, two teams.
Yeah.
Who won?
One of them.
One of them. Absolutely. One of them won. Who
Yeah.
got paid?
Both of them.
Ah, did they really lose?
Nope.
And what about the people that were selling all the paraphernalia and all the Super Bowl stuff that they sell?
Right.
Did they win?
Oh yeah.
What about us? We watched the show that we cheered and we were excited and we high-fived one another. At one point, we were all one until, oh no, that team lost. No, everybody got entertained, didn't we?
Yeah.
The world doesn't have to be win-lose. It could be win-win.
Yeah, I see with a lot of people that do the gossip is say like I was in traffic and this person cut me off and they come and complain about it. They don't know how to get the energy off of them. They want it off of them somehow, and they only know how to do it by telling someone else their issues instead of telling God.
Yeah,
Instead of
that's
just
right.
letting it go to God.
That's right. As a matter of fact, there was a scripture that I was reading. It was in Ephesians, and it was talking about how there's an empty or a void, and we try to fill that with our spouse, our friends, our work, our career, our whatever it is we're doing, even our pets. We just want to be loved and love. We do want that, but our pets die. Our children grow up, our spouses, they die as well. People are friends, they move on. Some people move, those things happen. But the one constant that we can always count on is that God is with us always. God will restore all of us, even the people that we claim as Christians are going to hell when there is no hell. Hell is here right now.
Mm-hmm.
In our minds.
Right.
I'm sure that you were in hell when you were an addict.
Oh yeah.
Right?
It's not until I came to peace with everything that I've done that I realized this is also a version of heaven.
Yes.
Albeit not the, not the end all heaven, but it is hell for sure.
Yeah, it could be a honeymoon on earth, or it could be a horrible marriage. And so you could have a wonderful life, or you can have a miserable life. It's still a life. And what do you choose to look at? And again, that's some of the things that we talk about in the workshop as well. And I hope that your followers will choose. All I have to do is go to whenyounneedafriend.com, or they can text me. We're giving away one, and actually two. We have a donor that said, instead of picking one person, I get to pick two people. So one person has paid for someone to go in the workshop. And today, I know that we're recording this, but today at 5 o'clock, I'm going to draw two people's name. So if you guys want to be in, I'll put your names in there too. But they have to be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The hours, they have to participate in the entire thing. So that's the question. If they can't participate on all of it, they cannot qualify for it. But anybody can join. I keep it small because I'm only one person. And then I have my people that have gone through the workshop. I've got people that they're going on their fourth time going on the workshop, because you only retain it's like you can retain one thing. I remember, I'll have to tell you, it's a real funny story. There's a woman, the first workshop that I did was back in November, and then I did it again in February. And this person that went in November and went again on February, at the end of Friday, she said, "Lillian, this is so powerful. I have never heard this before." And I said, "Oh, yes, you did. The first time, the first day, you heard all of it." And that goes to show you, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. She went through the first workshop. She got a lot out of it, but she didn't get as much as she got it the second time. And then when she went the third time, I tell the story, and I asked for permission. I don't say it's her, but I asked for permission to tell the story. And she goes, sure. I don't say her name, but it's funny.
Yeah.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I remember when I went through my transformation, there was a 13-year-old all the way to a 70-year-old. I'm like, what am I going to learn from a 13-year-old and what am I going to learn from a 70-year-old? But you know what? They blew me away. Once you are open, it is amazing what could happen. And when God is a part of you, and you know not just about God, but you intimately know God, like you know your best friend. See, that's not the one. That's when you pick up that phone. Hey, God, I really need to talk to you right now. Are you ready? Are you there? Will you listen? The answer is always yes. Always yes. God doesn't lie. God doesn't say no. We do to ourselves. We do to ourselves. And so to me, God is the perfect. When you and God are together and God is in you, you're an overwhelming majority. It doesn't matter if you're alone in a room, you will always have someone. Because if you only knew who walked beside you, if there's those people that say, I don't want God, I don't want God. If you only knew who walked beside you, you would know you're never alone.
That is a perfect way to end this. I love all that. Do you want to tell my listeners where they can find your podcast and all your stuff?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate you promoting. Well, go to whenyouneedafriend.com because people don't remember how to spell it. What's her name again? Lillian McDermott. You can go to lillianmcdermott.com, but whenyouneedafriend.com. Who doesn't need a friend, right? So whenyouneedafriend.com is where you can go. You can text me. The information is right there. I don't know if you can see it. It's Lily at whenyouneedafriend.com. You can email me. You can text me at 407-373-5959. If you go to my website, everything you need to know about me, except I need to update it, but is there. Like you can click on my BitChute account, my Facebook account, my YouTube, Odyssey. You can go to my podcast. You just click on there. So just remember whenyouneedafriend.com and you go there, subscribe, make sure you subscribe. Because when you subscribe, then you get I wrote an ebook called 90 I'm sorry, I just forgot because I was talking about it's called oh gosh, I can't remember. Loving your it's 90 days to self-love. That's it. I knew. You see, God gives me what I need when I need it at the moment I need it. Exactly. And I'm just one person who has just a little brain. But God, 90 days to self-love. So 90-day challenge to self-love is an ebook that you also get when you subscribe. And so you'll also get the audio to the podcast when you subscribe, so you don't have to go looking for it, but you can also click on whatever channel that you want to watch, and you'll get a blog once a week on Sunday at 4:44, because when I was going through personal growth, the number 4 was very symbolic of love. So when I send it, hopefully you'll get it at 4:44 in the morning so that you feel the love that it was written, and that you'll know who's going to be in the classroom. And of course, we've had David Icke in the classroom, Del Bigtree, and we just had Dr. Lee Merritt. And just this last week, we had Dr. Stephen LaTulip, who lost his license. His license to practice medicine was revoked because he said that no one in his practice wears a mask.
Wow.
He lost his license. And so he shared, and let me tell you, he's a strong Christian man,
Well, it sounds like you have some great guests on, and that
lots of wonderful teachers. Yes.
Yeah. And everybody, go check out Lillian's stuff.
Thank
I
you.
mean, everything you talked about is exactly what my show is for, with the things that I talk about. So it's so wonderful hearing someone with such experience and knowledge as yourself, and to know that I'm on a similar path in my own
Yeah.
way,
Mhm.
and finding out this information the way God wants me to find it, and it's beautiful. And I
Well,
want to thank you so much for coming on.
thank you. I can't take any credit for it. I have to give God the glory, first of all. Second of all, I knew um, that anytime something happened to me, it was because I would get to teach about it.
Mm.
And so I used to have this expression that was, God sent me first. God sent me first so that I can help you through this.
Wow, that's
And
beautiful.
so I'm thinking for you, I've got 10 years. And by the way, I researched you before I said yes to you. So I
Oh.
knew your story. And I'm grateful that God sent you before those other people that you will bring to the fold. And so just know that God sent me first. And I'm glad that that we were able to share this time so that we can learn from each other, find what we have in common. And all of a sudden, there are no strangers, right? No strangers.
That's right. That's so beautiful.
Thank
Love
you.
that.
Thank you again so much for coming on, and we're going to say goodbye to the audience. Goodbye, everybody.